Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to the channel RPG with DBJ. Of course, I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to this Future Friday. Um, for those who do not know, we take a subject, we talk about it all week long, and because of the untimely passing of one Chadwick Boseman, an individual who helped foster in something that became a worldwide phenomenon and something that I held very true to my heart when reading comic books and being a blurred a black nerd in the geekosphere. I loved his portrayal of Black Panther, and he was extremely important in bringing that to the big screen. And I felt like there's a lot that we could pull from for our tabletop RPG science fiction and transhumanist elements and talk about it on this channel. So on Future Friday, here on RPG with DBJ, we'll take that subject and we talk about science fiction, everything from the Victorian age all the way into the far future, more or less focusing around transhumanism. But I thought we would take the opportunity to talk about a subject that maybe many of you don't know about, but is a form of philosophy parallel along the lines of transhumanism and post-humanist thought. Okay, that's a lot to take in when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, but please follow me down our winding path of discovery. All right, so today's show, we're going to talk about Afro-Futurism. Now, some of you may not even know what that means, or even if you do know what it means, you may be thinking like, what does this have to do with me? Like, no offense there, DBJ, but like Afro-Futurism isn't exactly part of my particular culture, especially those who are participants in the show from around the world. And I want to say to you that even if you during this talk, even if you delete the Afro portion of the futurism, that I think it's quite relevant. So, going to Wikipedia, because Wikipedia has absolutely positively accurate information on everything. Afrofuturism is a cultural aesthetic, philosophy of science, and philosophy of history that explores the developing intersection of African diaspora culture with technology. It was coined by Mark Derry in 1993 and explored in the late 90s through conversations led by Alondra Nelson. Afrofuturism addresses themes and concerns of the African diaspora through technoculture and science fiction, encompassing a range of media and artists with a shared interest in envisioning Black futures that stem from Afro-diasporic experiences. And in short, what that means is, and mind you, you could literally delete the Afro from it and have it deal with anyone, but is the idea of picturing ourselves in the future. And Black Panther and Wakanda and the whole idea of this nation that's never been colonized and has kept its culture for the millennium that it's existed, and it's super high tech, yet they have still held on to their cultural beliefs. It's still a monarch. I mean, it's still a monarchy slash patriarchy. It still has a warrior culture. They are still a religious people who believe in like totemic spirituality, and even in the midst of being surrounded by all their high technology, there is still this idea of cherishing their ancestors and visiting them. Dead Man says Marvel had a bit of transhumanism with Wonder Man taking over Vision's body and powers. Well, even in transhumanism, it's huge in Marvel and DC Comics with cyborgs and androids. Vision has got married to Scarlet Witch in the comic books and had children, and they had a whole storyline that dealt with that idea because the children weren't real, but they were. But she created that. But anyway, but you get the point, right? Where there is this intersection of normalcy when it comes to culture and technology, and specifically in the case of Afrofuturism, while there is plenty of science fiction that depicts the scattered remnants of the people who left Africa, African Americans, in science fiction movies and television and such. Uh, Even in those cases, a lot of times, and it doesn't matter no matter what race or culture it is, we often think of the future as also being devoid of the culture we'll bring with it. Star Trek is a perfect example of a very scrubbed, uh, scrubbed and anesthetically designed culture of the future. Hey, we've reached a utopia where um, we've basically deleted our past culture to just wear jumpsuits, and every once in a while maybe somebody has something that's the size of the palm of your hand that kind of represents the culture they came from. Now, of course, there is a reason for having a blank slate culture in the future. It Star Trek allows us to tell stories about ourselves from the people out there. So it's always intersecting with the alien, the other, when you go out into space, and then we can tell stories about ourselves. So there's a reason for that. But more often than not, in a lot of these stories, you have these characters who are there, but they don't take anything of themselves and their past and their ancestry and their art and their language and culture with them. And not only do they not take it with them, but it seems to be scrubbed. It seems to be something tacked on. And Afro-Futurism is the opposite. It's like, no, we're going to reach the future hand in hand with the culture around it. And that's why Wakanda has the colors and the culture, the gentleman from the river tribe that was dressed in the aquamarine suit with the lip plate, the mining tribe that had the red clay in their hair and then on their bodies, Black Panther and his people walking around in their clothing and their the aesthetic that's in and around the places that they live. And so you could extrapolate that out to just about any culture and make that into its own science fiction theme where you could take imagine like an ancient Japanese culture into the future. And, once you start talking about techno samurai, I'm sure all of you are like, oh, now I get what you're talking about, right? Mono vibratory blade katanas and Japanese armor and things like that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Cameron says Afrofuturism is relevant to everyone. What is relevant to our neighbors should be relevant to us. I can still see myself in the Afrofuturistic world. Oh, absolutely. I say there is a small but vocal minority, and I find that ironic, a vocal minority that's very anti-diversity now for some reason, as if there isn't solid evidence that the more diverse a group you have, the greater your strength and intellect and social interactions are. I can't pull the stats, but I can tell you that it is a proven fact that the more people you have with divergent ideas and from various backgrounds, the greater your output will be, just through thought. But there is a vocal minority out there that screams when the word diversity is brought up. And unfortunately, just because of my background and my culture, when you are seen in everything, it's hard for that person to not understand that there's others who very rarely see themselves in those same genres, right? Wakanda is specifically it's a story written by and story character and locations developed by a bunch of young Jewish guys in the comic book industry, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and a bunch of others who felt that a voice wasn't heard. And the original Black Panther comics were all about like science and futurism. He was literally a spiritual character powered by high technology, fighting like aliens and robots and experiments going wild and outsiders trying to steal their own technology and that kind of thing. And it was a lot of that. It combined with like tribal imagery and spirituality and blending the two together, as opposed to the current concept of, well, if magic existed in technology, the two can't mix together, and they're like, no, it's a real thing. It's we don't, for the most part, all of us have a culture. We may not look at it that way, but we all have our own culture, and none of us want to put that aside to achieve some kind of technological utopia. We would rather bring that with us, whether it's our clothing, our language, our music, our and anything as minor as our hairstyles and colors, or just the way we look at government, or how we socialize, or all those kind of things. We want to take that with us, and so Afrofuturism does work. As a matter of fact, one of the during the cyberpunk era, during the mid 80s, Walter John Williams, William Gibson, more often than not, there was this like urban techno shamanistic element in it. Maybe not expressed in a lot of the outside the books, but if you read the books, you of course you have the corporations and the governments going out into space, basically escaping the gravity well, as it were, going out into the moon and these space habitats, and the people were the downtrodden were left on Earth. But in order, and I know all of you see this whenever you have a brand new development where the rich people get to live, right? Wherever you live, whether it's to the north and they're building new condos, or in a downtown area that's being redeveloped, or a abandoned area that's where the property values are going up. What eventually happens is those places need people. Yeah, Dead Man brings up Elysium. Yep. What ends up happening is, and Elysium is a really good example, like visually, of this futurism that I'm talking about, where it's scrubbed clean up in Elysium, but down on the ground level, it's nothing but like, it's all urbanistic, and technology is intermingled with culture. And a lot of times when the rich and powerful go off and they're like, oh, we want to live in our antiseptic neighborhoods, but guess what? They have to bring people with them. And during the cyberpunk era in literature, there were lots of people with like body piercings and scarification and tattoos and long dreadlocks, and maybe there was some black people involved in all of that too. I mean, it was all commingled together. People speaking, uh, Chinese and Japanese, and Kosa from Africa, and Spanish, all commingled together in this miasma of like trying to keep your culture to yourself while still trying to survive in this cyberpunk world. And so there were plenty of times in you'd hear about somebody in zero gravity, and a young lady would be completely bald because it's very difficult to cut hair in gravity, so they would just use something keep themselves bald. But maybe their cohort had long dreadlocks because, again, you can't cut hair in zero gravity, because the hair would just get in everything. So if you just let your hair grow and just have it locked or braided or corn rolled or whatever, it's very easy. Yeah, Dead Man brings up the City of a Thousand Planets, Valerian, in the City of a Thousand Planets, where everyone kept their own culture. And I think in transhumanism, it's very difficult to write in culture, because you'll start backing down this pathway where no matter how much detail you put in with earthly cultures, you're always going to forget someone, right? So it's better not to even mention it, which is it's a perfectly fine design element. It's you can't start writing science fiction and go, oh, Jackson, man, yeah, it's live there, Jackson. What do you mean, is it live? You're here. Welcome. It can be very daunting as a creator, tabletop RPG creator, to want to use real world cultures, because the the idea is that you're perfectly fine there, dude. The idea is that you'll always forget someone, no matter, like, if you add in 5 cultures, 85 cultures, 173 cultures. There's going to be someone somewhere who's going to say, well, what about, Madagascar? You forgot the culture that lives there. So I get that. But at the same time, when it comes to science fiction, everything from like clothing styles and outfits to the way people speak, they're going to bring along Hindu languages and statues. They're going to bring, Chinese flavor and such. And I think sometimes that's missing, and that can be the little flavor, the spice that you add to your stories when it comes to transhumanism that might be missing, especially when you combine that with very high technologies. For example, let's go with artificial intelligences. I think how cool it would be for people to bring back or use AI, artificial intelligences, and virtual reality to bring back like these ancient gods that represent their that are represented with their technologies. Now I'm going to do something because I have very little practical knowledge about, say, ancient Indian and Hindu gods. So sorry for those out there that know everything about them. I'm going to butcher it, but I want to bring this about because I think it would be so cool to see multi-limbed individuals in virtual reality, or like these brilliant elephantine, bedazzled, beings and creatures espousing like great wisdom to hackers that are out there in the surfing the mesh or something like that, or gang members with like jackets and stuff, and you see these multi limbs on the back of their jackets, and then all of a sudden, like a cybered out gang member pulls off their jacket, and you see these multiple mechanical limbs reach out of their back, or heck, even biomechanical implants where people are having extra arms literally attached to their torso and having their spinal cords turned mechanical to be able to handle the weight of like an extra 4 arms that are attached to their body, and they've been able to learn like a martial art with blades coming out of it. Cameron says, Ganesha is my dude. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that would be awesome. And even, heck, even going into a virtual reality world that is literally, what is it? A giant turtle with 4 elephants with 2 goats holding a bowl on its back or something. It's something of that nature. I cannot remember the exact description, but when you talk about virtual reality worlds, of course that's true. You can make anything in a virtual reality world, and that's just a simple example. Another one might be the reclamation of it would be like retro tribalism in a high-tech world where technology can be blended into the natural environment so that people can regress back to a tribalistic society on purpose to live that way, right? Like maybe there are photosynthetic trees that were genetically created that are able to power, they absorb sunlight like through their leaves, like a solar panel, and then they power electronic equipment and items so that there are people living in, I don't know, jungle canopies that are able to live there and hang out with their families and whatnot. Or they've even put on, they even have hands in place of their feet, much like the bouncers from Eclipse phase, living in tribal societies because they want to live in and amongst the trees, and this is the way they're able to embrace their whether it's their true culture or a misremembered version of the culture that used to be there that they're trying to bring back. So making mistakes about someone's culture is part of culture itself, right? Let's not forget that being wrong, being mistaken doesn't necessarily make you wrong. And so they're having these transhumanist, high tech places on Earth and elsewhere around the universe where there's in habitats or hollowed out asteroids where people are living and embracing the culture that they lost or cultures that they lost and mixing them together. I I think sometimes we miss out on that, and we want the silver lame suits where everyone's dressed the same, and laser weapons all look exactly the same, and they're clean, and walking down pristine white hallways with fluorescent tubing. But maybe it's a little bit dirty. Maybe there's a graffiti on the walls of the starship because that's how the people express themselves, with like nano paints or something. Cameron says Discworld is a disc on the back of three massive elephants standing on the back of a giant sea turtle that swims through space called the Great Atuin. Love those books. Yep, Discworld. Yep, it is the entire world is on the back in a bowl on the back of three massive elephants. And why not? Those books are amazing from what I can remember. And there's I'm mixing up something in my head. I'm mixing up Discworld and Riverworld. Oh shoot! I hate when it happens when I'm doing it live. But anyway, the whole point of it is that there's nothing wrong with including culture when it comes to science fiction, even if the culture runs counter to what technology allows us to do. An example is the unfortunate canceled television series Altered Carbon. Fingers crossed that it comes back in another format with other great stories. In Altered Carbon, they have a cortical stack, and the cortical stack you can place into it. It essentially makes people theoretically immortal as long as you're able to take the cortical stack and re-sleeve into another body. But people, even in this cyberpunk dog eat dog world, there is you can have a religious charter put on your cortical stack, which says, listen, for my religion, being re-sleeved is wrong. I want to pass on to the afterlife. Please don't re-sleeve my cortical stack. And even in this world, people respect that. Sorry, can't re-sleeve your loved one. They have this religious charter put on their cortical stack. They want to pass on into the other world. And there is some contention in the background as a beeline B story or subplot where one of the main characters is a detective, and she wants her family to live on. And it's like, see, there I go again, mixing up Altered Carbon and Upload. Okay, sorry. In Upload, there is a main character, and she wants her dad to live on by being able to be uploaded into this corporate-run heaven. And he's like, "No, that's not death. I want to see your mom. Your mom actually died, and when I die, I'm going to go see her." And she's like, "Wait, what?" And that's where culture and technology can mix together, and then there's like conflict as well, and you can tell some really great stories with that. Jackson Mayhem says, in the classic cyberpunk setting, tribalism is almost always defined solely by the identification of a group via a set of shared consumables. I'm going to agree with you, and let's dive into that a little bit further, right? How many of the main characters in those cyberpunk settings have lived in these like run down, nearly abandoned arcologies, and they've like placed their tribalist marks on the city by like growing fish in tanks on the rooftops and having like it's hard to explain this, but there is Deadman says usually the consumable in question is a drug, although there is this idea that another man's garbage is another man's treasure, where the lowest members of society live in these trash-strewn regions, but there's always someone, or at least a group of some people, that are able to take this basically trash thrown away by the upper reaches of society and turning it into something else, like robots and cybernetic limbs. And if not able to reconstruct the technology, if it's working only halfway, they know how to live with it only working halfway. Like, oh, the the elevator in the 200-story building we live in doesn't work, but we've jury-rigged our own mechanical platform that moves up and down the elevator shafts or something. Or, there's the old blind man that lives in room 12857, and the old blind man has some kind of thing implanted in the side of his neck that kind of gives him radar, and he chastises the young kids, but he's able to make his own homegrown candy in his room with honeycombs because he's got a beehive hanging out on his balcony or something. Like, I again, reaching into my ass and pulling something random out, it's this idea that people are like any tribal society that's able to move in and use what's around them. And even if they're misusing the devices, like, oh, people have a fire set in an abandoned car because that's where they cook their food. It's reusing what's around them and repurposing it for their lives. And sure, from the outside, the people who are, even though there's a middle class usually missing, the upper class look at them like they're less than trash and not worthy to recognize. The people that live in it are going, listen, this is the best way we can survive, and we're going to make do with what we have. And in cyberpunk, in the video games and movies that television shows that kind of embrace it, the best ones make the debris around them, even the dangerous stuff, when it comes to like guns and cyberware, it makes it ubiquitous. It's just another thing. It's just, oh, there's gang members on the street with cybernetic eyes. Well, of course they are. That's not really special. It's just different. It's just who they are and what they're able to do. And so in transhumanism, there's a way to explore and express these things, especially when the main characters are like for example, in Eclipse phase, the air quote main engine that moves the characters forward are playing firewall agents, at least in the first edition. In second edition, they also go into being explorers of exoplanets and being a criminal organization. But as firewall agents, they, Black Ops law enforcement group, the player characters are often tasked with needing to re-sleeve to get to place. You go into a needle caster or an ego caster. Your intellect and your brain is beamed to another place. You're in another body, and now you're in a different world. And an old video I have on the playlist, if you guys can find it, is one where I talk about beautiful problems. Is the idea that sometimes there's players that love to go shopping. Player character shopping is a big deal, where you're like, I'm going to shop for cybernetics. I'm going to shop for biotechnology and a bigger weapon and a new improved sight on my gun, and then transhumanist gaming is like completely throws that out the window. It's like, great, so now you're a badass. Guess what? You're gonna have to leave all that behind because you're gonna beam to Europa, and now you're gonna have to sleeve into some aquatic morph with from the waist down. You're like I don't know, a mermaid or something, and you're like, I gotta leave all my stuff behind. Damn it. I went shopping, and so, but the good thing about that, like I said, is a beautiful problem, is that as the game master, if you're intrigued by, I don't know, Egyptian mythology, and you're like, man, how cool would it be? I have this great story I want to tell about ancient Egypt and the Nile. Then you can tell that story because there's a hollowed out asteroid where everyone lives that way in this place, and they've completely embraced this part of their lost culture, and that can be a one-off story. And then once they're done in that mission, you've done a 1 to 3 shot, and now they're ready to go back to Mars, and you're like, man, I'm going to make this the gritty, the stritty greets of Mars, and they have to go out into the outback and, I don't know, socialize with the rednecks out there who hate the people that are trying to terraform the planet or something. And that can be a whole nother group of stories. And maybe we lose that a little bit in science fiction. think we should bring it back just a couple times. We should bring it back. Jackson Mayhem says, I mean, the consumption of goods can also build identities, and the other way around, especially depending on what those consumed goods might be, right? Whether it is a consumable that is purposefully placed into society by like a corporation, and people they form their identity around it, which is another thing in cyberpunk is branding. You know, selling out isn't a thing in cyberpunk. It's all about what you wear, which brands you have. Those brand identities become their own culture, surrounding their own culture as well. So that can be a thing. Like, hey, I only wear, what's a good brand? Like Oakley's. And maybe Oakley becomes this massive brand in the far future where, you know, everyone's wearing their jackets, and they also sell like cybernetic implants and, you know, physical enhancements and all this kind of stuff, all under that particular brand. So branding is a big deal in the future. I still remember my old cyberpunk and the security firm Arasaka, and Arasaka always had, you know, hired mercenaries out, and all the best weapons came out of most accurate weapons came out of Arasaka, but you could tell them from their we always describe them as being like dull matte black gunmetal. No matter, it's like you can buy an Arasaka weapon in any color as long as it's dull gunmetal matte black, right? All their clothing, all their outfits, and so you could see them from coming from a mile away. Which, sure, in a practical sense, doesn't make sense to embrace a brand, but we do that today, right? Heck, your local corner boy drug dealer dresses in brands because that gives them a social status that might not be recognized anywhere else, but within like science fiction, the brand might be a big spotlight on you as to who and what you are, but it also lends yourself some credibility within the group that you are in. Now, of course, corporations don't necessarily have to enforce a brand. Maybe there's some other kind of a consumption of goods that tells other people who and what you are. Like, for example, the people who are trash, who dig through piles of lost technology and trash, would never buy anything off a shelf. Today, we have people who make their own computers, and they build their own computers with parts, and you would never see them buy an off-the-shelf, fully formed computer because, you know, a real hacker puts their own computer together, right? And there is identity in that. Does it matter how good that the constructed deck is? No. I mean, yes, but no, because when you go to meet this person and you see that all of their computer hacking equipment has been cobbled together from the streets, you're like, okay, this person's real. They didn't just buy this out of a box and open it up like I would. You know, what are some other things? Like a doctor wearing a white lab coat, or scientists wearing a white lab coat. It's an identifier of what identity they have, and the same thing goes for unofficial groups, you know, gangs and people that live in particular neighborhoods. And it's like when you travel, you'll see people wear and dress and look and act in a certain way. And hey, when in Rome, you know, there's also, even the worst parts of society, there are identifying marks, because we as human beings, no one who lives in any kind of culture or part of a tribe or a faction considers themselves to be the worst part of it, right? No one goes, man, I wish I never lived in that culture, and oh, by the way, that part of my culture is worthless. No. Now, you may wish to leave that culture, but you're going to take it with you. You're going to have an empathy with those who live in it. And just like there's prison culture, the same goes on the streets as well. the people that are the bottom of the barrel, sure, they may not like their living status, but they're going to embrace it because what else do they have? And so certain types of identifiers, slang, clothing, certain types of mannerisms, behavior, relationship with authority, relationship with um, higher elements of society, the upper crust people, etiquette is very important. I think maybe we might lose that a little bit in technology, where sure you might have an instant language translator, but a language translator is not going to know the nuances between, I don't know, the 30 different dialects of, say, British culture in the various islands around Great Britain, right? There are plenty of videos out there of people who are able to move from one dialect to another within their own culture, and you can listen to them. They'll go, oh well, people from this part of my country speak this way, and they'll speak that way, and then and then but the people that live here, the lower blah blah blah, speak this way, and be able to mix and move their dialects. As a matter of fact, people who are part of this channel that participate in the channel that are across the pond, it's difficult for them to make out the all of the different dialects accents we have here in the United States. And those of us in the States, you could tell if you start talking about people from New England, Maine, Vermont, Connecticut, versus the people who live in the mid South, like North and South Carolina and Atlanta, down, and then you start moving into the middle of the country, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, and then you start moving further out to like Utah and Nevada, blah blah blah. And then you get into the microcosms, right, where you take a whole state and you go, all right, well, the people in northern Texas speak differently than western Texas, and blah blah blah. Cameron says salvagers interest me. They're like bugs. They're needed, so what is thrown away still goes to use as much as possible before it basically becomes dirt, ready to become the foundation for something new. And while a lot of times you hear about, like in modern day, you'll hear about people like, oh, that's the bad part of town, we've got to do something about the bad part of town. Salvagers, despite people saying those words, they don't really mean it, because you need a blow off valve, right, in society. And in high tech societies, salvagers are pretty important, because on one hand, people speaking out loud are like, dirty salvagers, I wish they never came around here. And then the minute the salvagers knock on the front door, they're like, come on in, let's talk. Maybe you found something of interest to me. Or, I love salving. I love the idea of being salvagers too. Like it wasn't a big thing, but remember in the movie, the Pacific Rim 2, I can't remember what was after the colon. Pacific Rim 2 something something. But hey, there was a character that built her own robot and her own kaiju. Jaeger. She didn't build a kaiju. She built her own Jaeger out of the destroyed, piles of giant Jaegers that were destroyed in the battle with the kaiju. And makes perfect sense, right? Now, of course, people walking around are like, you can't build your own robot. You shouldn't do that. But there's a pile of hundreds of tons of the stuff. Somebody somewhere is going to use it. And I love it. Cameron says, I got my new computer because my friend's work was throwing it away. I love salvaging. This computer's way better than the old one. That's another thing, too, especially, thank you, Dead Man. Pacific Rim 2 Uprising. I can't remember what's after the colon. Maybe none of us should remember what comes after the colon. Anyway, the idea of salvagers to me is awesome, because you never know what you might find. And how many times has it been said that it's better to buy something new than to fix the old stuff? And maybe as we get closer and closer to refining 3D printing, that might be the case, right? Where whole cars have been 3D printed, or at least mostly 3D printed and assembled. But the problem is you can't get to certain places. When you 3D print something, the interiors of it are sealed inside. Say they break down and someone goes, excuse me, wow, Sorry about that. So the 3D printing of it goes away. They toss it away and go, yeah, it'll be scrap. We'll decompose it and throw it back into the hopper to be used as feeding material for something. Cam was like, that was a solid joke, DBJ. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I might have to flush that one away. Scatological humor. Anyway. Oh, sheesh. Anyway, squirrel. I need to get a video piece on a squirrel right on the side of me somewhere over here. But throwing things away and making it easier, especially when you have resources, is probably preferable, right? Why fix it? Just get a new one, print it out, no big deal. And the stuff thrown away again becomes someone else's treasure, and I think that's really cool. And of course, salvagers have their own culture in and around themselves. And listen, spirituality, I feel, will not go away just because technology explains more and more of the universe. I get that in outside of role playing, transhumanist thought has conflict with religious philosophies because the technology is starting to get closer and closer to mimicking the aspects of godhood. And so that's where we have outside of tabletop role playing games, that's where you see that confrontation. So if you start typing in like post-humanism or transhumanism, you'll see a lot of that philosophy, people arguing on one side or the other. But in my estimation, I don't think spirituality will go away. I think it'll actually be embraced because the more and more we understand our universe, the more we want to explain the things that we don't understand. And spirituality does give an explanation for those things, whether you feel that they are true or not. Dead Man puts in Ready Player One takes place in 2045 when much of humanity uses the virtual reality software Oasis, which stands for ontologically anthropocentric sensory immersive simulation. I did not know it stood for that. I thought it was just called the Oasis, as in the regular word. To escape the desolation of the real world. Side note, I love the idea of stacked RVs. Shout out to Ohio, because at least in the movie Ready Player One, the miles and miles of stacked RVs were in Ohio. So great place to put them because Ohio is very flat, kind of a basin, and so yeah, kind of cool in a nasty I don't know, abandoned auto place would look like. Anyway, orphan teenager Wade Watts, or Sheridan, actor Sheridan, finds clues to a hidden game that promises Oasis ownership to the winner, and he and his 4 allies try to complete it before a corporation run by businessman Nolan Sorrento can do so. Yeah, Ready Player One, basically, if you think about it, it's young people, if not the world, using tossed away or cobbled together technologies to exist in another world that puts them at the top of the food chain, right? Uh, gotta love it. Gotta love it. Cameron says a whole underground city could be made on the trash of the soft sitting curves in the above city. Now, throw it away, dear. Let the undercity have it. We can write it off on our taxes. I don't know why I'm picturing someone in like a pastel colored 50s dress with the bouffant hair and like pastel yellows and blues, Dennis the Menace style. I don't know why I'm picturing that with that quote, but that's what I'm picturing. And of course, he's sitting in a smoking jacket, like, yes, dear, give it to the undercity. 50s car sitting outside with floating in the air or something. Jackson Mayhem says a lot of texts on posthumanism are printed by Christian institution. There's a lot of interest there. Yeah, and now mind you, we're definitely a open-minded tabletop RPG community here on this channel, but you can find a lot of a lot of mind fuel if you go down like the post-humanism texts and things like that. Now, mind you, a lot of that is very agenda driven, for good or bad. There are people who are like, transhumanism and technology is bad because of these reasons, and some say it's good because of these other reasons. I'm a glass half full kind of person, so I'm always looking at the positives of things. So for me, um, the greater chance that technology equalizes all of us, I think the better. But there we unfortunately we do live in a world where status is everything, and people will cobble together status and put themselves at the top in any way, shape, or form they can get. Right. So yeah, unfortunately. But yes, I a whole like underground, almost like the goodly, the rich and goodly people, they ain't good, but whatever, live in the clouds and they dump all their trash down below, and the people that live in the undercity take that trash. Hell, Bay City in Altered Carbon is kind of like that, right? Where the meths live in the floating cities and everybody lives below them. Now, it's not technically them dumping trash, but I can't see it would be far from it. Yeah. Yeah, Jackson Mason. That's like in Altis, or Alita Battle Angel. Yep, the Alita series, or Battle Angel Alita, whichever way you go with that. Yeah, the people living above with their cities chained down, but they're floating up into the sky, and they're just basically, you can literally see almost like rainwater, except guess what? It's just trash dumped away, and people scavenging through trash dumps and heaps and things. There's an old, yeah, Deadman says the meths live in aerostats. Those are what is it? They are designed to float using materials that allow them to float in the air. But do we really care how they float? No, it's just cool to have floating cities, and then we just make up some pseudoscience as to why they actually do float, in Earth's atmosphere or something. But Venus possible, other gas giants possible, Earth, not so much possible without extensive use. Uh, Harry, what's up, man? Oh, thanks for the coffee. I have myself my almond milk. Yes, support this channel, you sons of bitches. Anyway, thank you very much for the cup of coffee. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for the super chat, Harry. I really wish. Do me a favor, if you're going to do that, give me something so that I can honor you by talking about it. I appreciate your love and devotion, but you, dude, challenge me, man. Give me something. Stick your finger in me so that I might like it. Um, uh, Pick the correct orifice, by the way, if you're going to do something like that. Now, I'm feeling like the as role playing games, right? We have things like guns and armor, we've got technology, we've got skills. But if we really want to go for it, yeah, Cam's like, wait a minute, that's not the subject of this chat. What the heck? I'm gonna have to turn this down. I'm at work. Yeah, that sure did go somewhere dirty. um, anyway, I am definitely going to have to get a squirrel gif or gif next to me over here. Anyway, culturism and technology and things like that, I think, can really add a lot of flavor into the game. So let's take something simple. We got to have firearms, right? So there may be a complete difference between off the shelf, perfectly new, rip off the bubble wrap firearms versus those that are, say, welded together through trash and junk heaps and things like that. And neither one needs to be better or worse. Like, you don't have to make your trash created black market weapons have a greater failure chance, which is, you can do that, but you could also have it where the cobbled together weapons down in the trash heap city, sure, they might be less reliable, but they're far more powerful because they've taken off the safety, uh, whatever safety features there are, versus the pop the bubble wrap and I'm gonna strap this weapon on my shoulder and go run and gun, where they're more accurate but they don't do as much damage or something like that. Yeah, yeah, give you guys, yeah, Deadman says a squirrel gif and a button to activate it when you go off topic. I'm gonna have to give that to somebody else though. Like somebody's gotta have a button where they can just press it like boop. Have the squirrel just peck me in the ear like go get back on, throw nuts in my head. Uh, Jackson says, if y'all interested in Afro-Futurism, I can recommend Faye Thompson's Rosewater trilogy. Good stuff. Ooh, thank you. Ooh, somebody put a hot take in there. Faye Thompson's Rosewater trilogy. Dead Man, if you could do me the honor of placing that into the Discord, I would really appreciate it. I try not to ask. I ask too much of you as it is, but if you could put the link in there, or even put it into the chat, I would greatly appreciate that. That would be sweet. Yeah, Afrofuturism, uh, like Cameron mentioned earlier in the chat, involves everyone. It is this embracing of, hey, if I'm going to be kind of rude here. If those people can keep their culture, why the hell can't we? Or hell, they've brought their culture along. Please take me along with you. Here's another modern day thing that I think is rather foolish. Is this There's this pushback against primarily Caucasian people absorbing and taking in African American culture, and in the future there's no doubt that we understand that there won't be any dividing lines between what people look like, because we already know that race isn't a real thing. Scientifically, there is no such thing as race. There's only differences in culture and upbringing, and then there's differences in biology. But there is no such thing as a difference in race. It is an artificial construct. Well, we know that in the future. Why it is that since we know that in our futurist science fiction worlds it doesn't exist, why we still have it today, I don't know. But this idea that um, anybody of any heritage and lineage would be part of Afrocentrism, I think, or Afrofuturism, I think makes perfect sense, right? Like, hell, why wouldn't people from other cultures grow dreadlocks in zero gravity? Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? Or why would they not do so? Why wouldn't anybody of any culture shave their heads and use, their head and or various portions of their naked body be covered with anything from tattoos to scarification to piercings to henna and paintings? Like, why wouldn't you use your body that way, especially in light gravity and zero gravity, when you don't want too many things dangling off of you? But at the same time, the idea behind like dreadlocks was that if you cut your hair in zero gravity, all you're going to do is put hair. It's like any kind of spilled fluid, like blood or something, in zero gravity. It just goes everywhere. It doesn't settle down, and it can gum up the works. Why wouldn't that be a thing? Or why wouldn't people of various genetic heritages embrace other people's cultures? Like I brought up Hindu Indianism, or what's another thing that's common in science fiction? Islam is very popular in science fiction, and the workers, the blue collar workers of the future, are going to bring with them their own culture when they try to build these bigger and better and broader landscapes, when the rich and powerful and privileged of any culture and and heritage move out into space. When rich people move out into the suburbs, you got to have somebody work at the restaurants and pump gas and all that kind of stuff. And who are those people? Those are the uh, uh, economically and socially lesser of the two. Not necessarily in my opinion, but kind of viewed that way. Like, hey, yeah, we moved out to the suburbs. Where's my movie theater? you know. Thank you very much there, Dead Man. Dead Man pops in Faye Thompson's Wormwood trilogy into the Discord. Includes book one, Rosewater. Uh, um, Tade, I'm pronouncing it Thade, so it's Tade Thompson. Jeez, see, there I go. Tade Thompson is a British-born Yoruba psychiatrist who is best known for his science fiction novels. And by the way, Jackson Mayhem and others, this show is simulcast on Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. At least the audio is punched out to our Discord server. So if you would like to participate in the show in that manner, you may do so on those platforms as well. We go live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. My time, Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern whatever. You get the point. For at least an hour. Harry says, a curious thing about tattoos. At one time, it was a magical mark. Like arthritis tattoo might be to reduce or remove pain. Yet, who's to say that marking the body couldn't be... There couldn't be a correlation... Because, okay, follow me on this circular logic here, okay? That... thanks, Dead Man. Following the circular logic, that technology begins mimicking the very things that the past histories of our world were thought magical, but now today they are technologically possible, mimicking the very things that we thought ancient man was doing in the first place. Jackson Mayhem says, I wonder if tattoos can be done in 0G. Ooh. Wow. I think it could be problematic. I think it could be done, but might be problematic. You might have to use some kind of pneumatic feature, not just because I've got a tattoo, and you know how the ink gets kind of pushed into the skin. I could imagine something pneumatic where it uses force, maybe air or something like that, to push the ink down rather than making a wound and letting the ink seep into it. But hey, they brought that up on the Expanse, where there were injured people in zero gravity, and in order to heal them, they had to get into... They could not heal properly because of internal bleeding, because of that fact, right? Yeah, like Harry says, you would have to lock both into place, both the ink and the human body, to do that. Yep. Dead Man says Babylon 5 had a techno mage in one episode making effects with nanotech. Yeah. Could you imagine, like, how easy would it... Easy, like I know this, but how easy would it be to have nanotech tattoos of people that, like you said, a tattoo that cures arthritis, and you see the tattoo lines that run up and down the arms, the hands, and the shoulders of someone suffering from arthritis. And of course, they're older, but they're 107 years old, but they're moving freely. And maybe the side effect of the tattoo is that it has a geometric look, but the medical function of it is irregardless of the tattoo itself. So we start adding the cultural aspect to it, to the curing of the tattoos, helping our bodies out, almost as if they are a mix between biotech and cybertech. It's basically injecting science and nanotechnology in through the skin, and it just happens to appear as tattoos or some kind of scarification, or heck, body implants, like, piercings of, nose, limbs, whatever. Maybe those piercings are, skill sauce that give... one of the piercing in my ear is a skill saw for martial arts, and the piercing through my upper arm, isn't just a rod, but that's also a skill for, I don't know, astrophysics or something, and oh, guess what? The piercing over my eye gives me thermal vision or something. Like, you could really start to mix and match, and much like covering our cell phones with not only like something that's protective, but something that has a particular design element to it, and bedazzling the back of your cell phone. Why wouldn't we use technology and bedazzle all of our stuff? Of course we would. Of course we would. And yeah, thank you, Dead Man, very much for reminding people that, you know what, guys, we're here Monday through Friday. Please join the Discord server. Please follow over on Twitch, YouTube as well. Sub. Please like, share, subscribe, sub, follow, interact, spread the word as well. But just to let everyone know, the Tate Thompson books, Rosewater, written in 2016 and revised in 2018, the Rosewater Insurrection and the Rosewater Redemption are all books featuring a British-born Yoruba psychiatrist who wrote some novels. And thank you very much, there, Mayhem. Please, Jay Mayhem, join us, as well as everyone else. Cam's already here. Everyone, Cam F and everybody, Dead Man. Thank you very much for being a moderate moderator, because I know you have a lot to say and you don't get a good chance to say it. So I apologize for that too. Guys, everybody, thank you so much for just being part of the show. I really appreciate it. If you are someone who's into, science fiction in general, but, we tend to talk about Eclipse phase, Altered Carbon, the Expanse here on this channel. Please do so. And bring your friends, bring some tabletop RPG mind fuel. Bring your goodness over to the show. Next week, not sure exactly what we're going to do. One part of me wanted to talk about the passion industry, but something else came up that we might talk about in the future. But whatever. You guys are brilliant. Someone's going to say something about something that I'm going to pick up on. So anyway, guys, have a great one. Today is Future Friday. Thank you very much for joining RPG with DBJ. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. I will see you later. Thank you very much. Bye.